Good morning, eighth graders. So, this is officially our first set of notes. This is section 1.1.0 notes, all on ETS. And essentially, how are we hopefully going to solve some problems when it comes to science and all the things we may encounter? We are focusing in on these three ETS standards 1-1, 1-2, or sorry, 1-1, 3, and 4. Essentially, you should be able to appropriately use the steps in the engineering design process when trying to solve a problem. Um, whether it is the engineering design process, whether it's the scientific method, all of them kind of sort of have the same concepts. So that by the end of today, you should be able to evaluate the criteria and constraints of a problem and an experiment to provide a viable and working solution. You should be able to analyze data and results, so finding trends, patterns, cause and effects graphs, of several different design solutions to determine how the experiment or model can be improved or redesigned. And then finally, you can develop and revise experiments and models in order to produce valid and accurate data or um, in search of a viable design solution. So make sure you have these notes out in front of you. It should say 1.1.0 at the very top of the notes. And the only way these notes are offered right now is lecture. We'll get into our options in the next unit, but this is something that we need to just kind of get used to. So your champ's expectations. Your conversation should be between a 0 and a 1, more so 1 when you're communicating with me. Help, raise your hand. I'll call on you. I'll come over. You, excuse me, you are working on notes. You can get up, sharpen your pencil, grab a tissue, submit notes into like one of three ways, all that kind of stuff. Participation, get your notes done and turned in. That is also how you're going to show me success. So there's your champs for today. So, what is it? The engineering design process is an 8-step process that engineers tend to use in creating functional products or processes to solve problems. This is probably the only content we're going to cover this year that you have covered in years past. This should have come up in 6th grade and for sure in 7th grade, and we're gonna come back to this multiple times throughout this year. So there are 8 steps to the engineering design process, starting at the top or the 12 o'clock position and then working our way around clockwise. So we have define, research, brainstorm, choose, build, test, communicate, and redesign. We're going to talk about each of these 8 steps and how it can look, not just in the real world, but also how it can look in our classroom. So make sure you have the diagram filled out, and then we're going to go through each of these. So define. What does it mean to define? Essentially, it is understanding the problem so that you are able to start along the way to solving it. So you need to understand what the problem is before you try to solve it. Okay. If I am sitting here and I'm like, ugh, I have to get recordings done, but I am useless after 4 p.m. What do I do? Well, I could just drink some more coffee in the afternoon. I could maybe focus myself to stay at school until the recordings are done, so on and so forth. So what needs to be fixed? What is made better? Well, for me, it needs to be getting my recording done. That's my problem. Okay? Research. This is looking into what others might have already done and improved on current processes. That's Will. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry about that. So improving upon a current process. So the idea of making recordings isn't new. It's not new to me. It's not new to most everyone. So what I would need to do in order to start the research process is I need to identify that, sometimes two heads are better than one. Maybe I need to sit down with Mr. Genero and figure out, hey, how can we both get this done because it's going to benefit us? Or how am I going to do this so that I'm not a crank to my period one class or whatever? Um, Also, I think a lot of grown-ups have already told us, like, oh, the internet's melting your brain. The internet in this case could be a very powerful tool. So use it to your advantage. See what have other people already done to solve your problem, because you don't want to have to do more work than what's necessary. Don't reinvent the wheel. Maybe you're just improving upon it. So for me, I'm trying to figure out how can I get my recordings done. Well, I am going to sit down and I'm going to talk with maybe my team. So, can I take third period to get my recordings done? I'm going to talk with Mr. Genero. Am I going to have designated time where I don't have to have Will or his monitor with me? Can I get that done? Things like that. Okay, and maybe I'll go to the internet and just do a quick little search online and be like, how to get so much done in a very short amount of time. Okay, those are some of the things I'm going to be researching. Then we're going to brainstorm. I'm going to come up with every single solitary possible way that I can get this done. And the thing is that there's really no bad ideas. They're just ideas. And then it is that idea feasible or can it be done? So think about how you want to resolve the problem or improve the current design. Produce as many ideas as possible. So like I just said, maybe it's talking with my team, maybe it is coming up with a plan so that I'm not like in charge of Will. Maybe it is the more coffee or waking up early or so on and so forth. I'm going to come up with all those. Maybe it's one day I'm just not going to sleep. I'm going to pull an all-nighter like I used to in college, and I am going to get every single solitary recording done that I can in that amount of time. Okay, now, is the idea of me staying up all night really that feasible? No. Okay, it's not a bad idea, it's just that it's not a feasible idea. It's not something that is going to benefit me in the end, and it's sure not going to benefit you in the end. So that one I'm just going to take off the table. Third period, not really easy to do that because we have meetings and that's the only time I get with my team and all this or whatever. So now I'm going to start kind of checking through and finding the faults in each of the ideas I've produced. The one person who seems to know how to brainstorm is Miss Ada Twist. Throughout the year, you're going to notice I bring in as many little clips as possible, and they tend to be from kids' shows because that is my life. But I am going to link this video into Schoology in case it doesn't play the way it should. It may not play the way it probably won't play the way it should. So I'm just going to link it in and I want you to take a peek. Yes, they're singing, but it's a fun way to get kids engaged in the engineering design process. So that.
We'll get you down, Mushu.
In my helicopter? But
So, if you watched that clip, hopefully you did, you saw some ways that Arthur was trying to resolve the problem. And it just didn't go the way it should have because it wasn't a feasible idea. Why would we use tennis rackets to try to get a cat and a helicopter off of the roof? Things like that. But they're going to try to come up with as many possible solutions, and then they're going to start narrowing it down. They're going to choose or design their actual process of getting the cat down. So you need to draw out your ideas, give some rough measurements, possible outcomes. They talked through all this. They drew out little diagrams. Who knew you could make a little like bouncy house out of pool noodles? They drew it out. They actually replicated it. And then they talked about the things that just weren't going to go well. Like Iggy could easily dress up as a mouse, but if he's afraid of mice, how well is that process really going to work? Probably not so much. So, yeah, so there's those sort of things. So if we go back to the idea of me needing to get my recordings done, this is where I'm like going through and I'm like, okay, all-nighters, not a good idea. Not because it's not possible, but because it's just not going to be a solution that works best for me or you. Drinking more coffee. I mean, you guys have already seen me. I probably don't need any more caffeine in my life. Like having designated time in the afternoon, just it's really hard in my life, just with everything Will has to do and all the things that I still have to do. To where it's starting to come up with that idea of waking up early. Okay, so that's where we're kind of at with that choose and design. I started with, okay, I'm going to wake up early. Maybe I'm going to wake up 10 minutes before my alarm used to go off and see how that goes for a little bit. And that brings us to build. So I'm going to start building out my timetable. If I wake up at like 10 minutes earlier, that means I have 10 more minutes to get this done. And then I kind of just plan out my day. If you continue to watch the show, you see the characters moving through and creating a couple different prototypes in order to hopefully get Mushu and the helicopter off of the roof. So this is where you make a working model. And you make sure that the prototype follows the specific criterias and constraints. Essentially, things that kind of like pigeonhole you into specific results, kind of. Maybe not results. Results isn't a good word. Pigeonhole you into specific like specifications. Okay, so that's where you start building. This is where I create my, like, if I wake up 10 minutes early, if I wake up 20 minutes early, so on and so forth, and I kind of lay out my schedule. Then you gotta test it. You can't just sit here and be like, oh, that's a really good theory, because if you don't test it, you don't know if it actually works. So this is where I start to test out waking up a little bit earlier, setting my alarm 10 minutes earlier, setting my alarm 20 minutes earlier, until before you know it, I am up at 4 a.m. I'm taking specific measurements. I'm saying, okay, 10 minutes early, that just gave me 10 more minutes to like zone out and not get anything done. 20 minutes, okay, now I can get my laptop open. I can start actually like the process, but nothing really gets done. And so on and so on and so on until you find kind of that sweet spot. So for me, it's 4 a.m. Hour to get ready, hour to record my lecture, and then I can start getting Will up and ready for the day. Now, I was kind of listing some of the different measurements that I was taking during my experiment. Okay, I just had 10 more minutes to zone out. I had 10 minutes to zone out and I could get my laptop open, but no recording was actually happening. Things like that. The type of data that you're going to be collecting is of two different variations. You have quantitative data and qualitative data. So quantitative data is your numbers. usually from measurements. So this is me writing down, okay, instead of waking up at 5 a.m., what is it like waking up at 4:50? 4:50 equals 0 productivity. 4:40, 5% productivity. Things like that, where it's like, okay, I'm writing down specific numbers, specific measurements to where if someone were to come in and go through my schedule with me in a similar manner, they would be able to take these very similar measurements. Very, very specific. Qualitative is more of those observations, written out explanations describing what is being seen. So that waking up at 4:50, 0 productivity was my quantitative, but my qualitative was zone out time. Okay, 10 minutes just wasn't enough. And those are the things where I start to say, okay, qualitative for 20 minutes earlier. Well, I can get my laptop out, I can get my area kind of sort of set up and ready for the day, but that's about it. And it just continues from there. So quantitative is going to be your numbers, your quantity, very specific measurements. Qualitative is going to be your observation, the things that might vary depending on who's the one in the process of it. Then I'm going to communicate. This is maybe just talking it over with a friend. Maybe this is going to peers who are facing the similar problem. This is throwing it out onto a Reddit forum and say, what have you done before? Here's everything I have done. But you need to tell the world what you've created. Share what you were able to create to solve your problem. Listen is the biggest key to what others have done as well. Maybe some people are like, oh, you know what, that 4:40, yeah, no, like I just get started sort of thing. But if you try waking up instead of 10 minutes earlier than that, maybe only 5 minutes, so then I still get 5 more minutes sleeping. Who knows? Okay. Listen to what other people have done. Some people, yeah, they can stay up all night. They can figure it out. And they're going to put on your forum, like, why don't you just stay up later? Like all this. You're going to have some people who are like, well, just record while you're actually in the classroom. 2 birds, 1 stone. Easy peasy. Which, yeah, totally. Wish that could happen. Also, don't wish that could happen. Not as great audio. But things like that. So you need to communicate, you need to talk it out, you need to tell people, here is what I've done so far. The idea of this is like if there was a person in this world who has cured cancer, but then they keep the secret to themselves, that's not helping anyone. Versus if they go and they tell the world in whatever forum they can, then everybody gets to reap that benefit. Maybe some other teacher is sitting in the same boat as me saying, when do I get my recordings done? And then they stumble upon my little post and they're like, oh, I guess I never thought of waking up at 4 a.m. And like, yeah, I don't know who else likes to wake up at 4 a.m., but you know. So there's those sorts of things. So tell the world. Finally, once you have told the world and then you start getting more feedback, and you need to be open to feedback. Feedback is not always negative, it's constructive. Okay? That is the difference between 4:30 and 4:35 needing to wake up. Okay? That sort of a thing. So the redesign process, so after you've communicated and you've heard everybody else's little like, oh, well, what if you did this? Or hey, did you think of that? Then taking some of those ideas and putting it into your solution to hopefully make it better. So what did you learn from others and what went wrong during testing? Maybe there was one day where my alarm didn't go off, so I woke up in a panic at like 4:15 and I'm like, oh goodness, where did my 15 minutes go now? That sort of a thing. So what went wrong? The idea I love is how the Google, oh my goodness, train of thought just gone. But how Google has changed. Okay. I am older than Google. Hate to say it, but I am. I'm older than Google. The very top Google icon is the old version. To me, when I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's very like old person-y because that's the type of text you see when you're looking at like ancient like novels that were once written in calligraphy, things like that. Versus it took them many, many, many years to then move from that top icon down to the bottom one. And what is the difference? It's a more modern sort of font. It's more like squared and bubbled than it is curly and cursive-y, um, all that kind of stuff. The coloration, it didn't change much, but it did brighten a little bit. You can tell the blues are a little bit of a lighter blue. The green is a little bit of a lighter green, so on and so forth. To where it just makes it seem more new and fresh and things like that versus old and drabby and things. Yeah. So it was a way for Google to rebrand themselves from this old school, like you got millennials that are older than it, to wanting to pull in the Gen Z, the alphas, being like, you know what, we're still relevant, we're still good because you guys have so many more options to now. But so just simple redesigns. So this is where I finally get to the point where I'm like, okay, 4 a.m. works. 4 a.m., an hour to get ready, and then I'm down here by 5:05-ish, and I can make my coffee and I can get myself set up, and I can still get all these recordings done within 20-ish minutes, start exporting it, throwing it online, and Will is still asleep. Restless, but asleep. Now, would this need to change if, say, Will were to wake up? 100%. You will see in some later videos what happens when he wakes up in the middle of my recordings. Things like that. It happens. It's being able to redesign and to come up with a new solution. I've thrown these words out a little bit throughout this lecture. So we have criteria, constraints, and prototypes. So criteria are the specifications that must be met in your design. Okay. So criteria for recording. I need to have time in order to actually record my 20+ minute lecture, export it because my internet's better than the school's internet, and then get it uploaded onto YouTube before I leave for my day. Those are the criteria, the things that need to be met, the constraints that are met. Maybe it is the certain type of material you can use. One of the constraints in the Ada Twist video was they're not allowed to use a ladder when mom and dad aren't around. Okay, that was a constraint. Nose goes. In some labs, it's going to be the amount of material you have available to you or the type of material you have available to you. My constraints is it has to be done before I leave my house. So if I leave my house at 7:20, I need to make sure that everything is done and ready to go before then. Okay? And really, I put the constraint of this all needs to be done before 6 a.m. because someone's got to get ready for the bus, and all that kind of stuff. A prototype. This is a working model. This is something that you're going to test certain design features on. It's not your final product. It's the product before the final product. So those sorts of things. Now, the really awesome thing about the engineering design process is that it doesn't have to go circular. Okay. Once we get into some of these parts, one second. Excuse me. Once we get into some of these steps, we might realize, oh, that's not going to work. So now I need to go back to the brainstorming process. Once I start building, maybe I run out of certain supplies. Well, now I got to go back to the research and see what can I do instead. Things like that. I like to think of this as like if you're trying out a new recipe. Okay, if you're baking something and you're trying out something new, and let's say midway through you run out of vegetable oil. Well, what is a substitute for vegetable oil? Things like that. And that's usually where I go to. the Googs and I say, what can I substitute for vegetable oil? Or you have a constraint of you can't have dairy in your product. So, what is a substitute for butter? Things like that. So, you can bounce around. Maybe as you're communicating it, you don't even get to the redesign process, but you realize I just need to go back and test a little bit more. I have good data, but I need a little bit more. You can do that. If you're in the middle of a build and you just realize that's not going to work, you go back to the brainstorm or the research. It's fine. Or here's the best thing, you get through like everything, you're communicating it to your peers or the world, and then you realize that that's not the problem. So now you actually have to go all the way back to the beginning and redefine your problem, because maybe the problem wasn't G needs to get up earlier or how do I get this all done, but it's why do I need to get this done? And then I need to go back and I need to like figure out why do I need to get these recordings done? Things like that. So you can bounce around. It does not have to go in a perfect circle, nor should it, because you are all intelligent enough to be able to be like, this isn't going to work, so I'm not going to take it all the way through the redesign process and just fix it then. I'm going to fix it before it gets to that point. Okay? Final little thing. So I absolutely love Crash Course Kids and Crash Course Science. So I want you to watch this video. I want to say it's less than 15 minutes. Oh my goodness. It's like I don't yawn all morning until I get the microphone in front of me. But I want you to watch this. Like, just take it in a little bit. They explain it in a way that I am not able to sometimes. So that once you're done with this video, you can make sure your notes have your name on it, and then you can submit them in one of the 3 ways that I have given you to submit your notes. And congratulations, you have completed your first full set of notes. Phenomenal. If you do need anything, please reach out to your teachers. We are here. We want to help. If you are like, gee, this makes no sense, come on up, come chat. Not just to me, but whatever educator you have in your classroom. So yeah, awesome. Any questions, just let us know. We're here to help. Fantastic. Thank you, 8th graders. Have a good day.